Right, so in today's video I'm going to explain how you can stop your patio flooding by installing a French drain. But before we get into the video, I have been in the process of renovating my garden for the past 2 years. I've got loads of videos on my channel, such as how I've laid a patio, how I've built a retaining wall, how I've seeded a lawn from scratch. So if you'd like to check out any of those videos, please head over to my channel, and if you like what you see, feel free to subscribe. Now obviously the patio isn't flooded at the moment because we've had a dry couple of days, but you can see how much dirt is sitting on the surface. Every time we try and clean the patio, what happens is the water drains away from the house, which is a positive thing, but all the water seems to pool and sit here. Now the flooding goes up to about here, and around this section here it's about an inch, sometimes 1.5 inches deep, which is obviously a massive problem. Now my initial idea was to put the French drain behind this lawn bordering. However, these gaps in the stone just aren't big enough for the water to flow through at an appropriate rate. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be removing all of this lawn edging from here all the way down, and we're going to be running a pipe that entire way down into this drain over here. You can see I've already made a start. I've taken some of the lawn edging out so far just to see how difficult it would be, and it's not too bad. So the plan is to remove all this bordering, to dig a trench down, put the drainage pipe in that space, cover it with stone, and then get some new lawn edging in front of that to separate the patio from the grass. So I started off by taking a lawn edging tool, running it right down the edge of the current lawn bordering, just taking into account the width of the pipe and also the width of the lawn bordering too. If you want this to be really crispy, you can run a string line. This is what I did when I put the lawn bordering in front of the retaining wall, but it's not something you have to do. I used the mattock to dig the trench, and this came in really useful because the width of the mattock was roughly the width of what I wanted the trench to be, which made things really easy when digging it through. I bought this from Toolstation about 2 years ago when I first started the garden renovation, and it's honestly worth its weight in gold. I've used it so many times. I've used it to dig the actual trench when I was building the retaining wall. I've used it to level the clay soil. So if you don't have one of these tools in your garage or your shed, it is definitely something you should be invested in if you are doing a similar renovation to what I'm doing to my garden. As an expert landscape gardener, I thought I'd use the very fancy technique of sitting on my backside and just booting the lawn bordering as hard as I could, just to try and get it loose. Now, I did use the mattock to chip off as much of the cement from the back of it as I could, but it just needed a bit of force just to get it out of place where it had been sat for the past couple of years. The IKEA bags came in really handy as well, just for putting all that loose clay and the bits of stone that I was finding into them as I was working. The aim was to try and keep the workspace as tidy as possible, but as you can see as the video goes on, that sort of just goes to pot. But the bags did come in useful when it came to taking all the clay to the tip. It saved me having to buy a skip, which would have been, around about £170–180. There we go, most of the edging has been taken out now. So most of what's below here is just clay, so it shouldn't be too difficult to dig through with the mattock. I mean, there are still bits of cement and things left over, but they're all loose now, which will be easy to sort of take out. Got this last piece of edging, which I'm going to leave for the time being because it's not going to have any impact on where the pipe is going to go. And I've just lifted the drain now. I mean, I did this beforehand, but you can see that there is a drainage pipe on the left hand side here. So this pipe here is obviously running underneath the patio and this patch of grass. I do remember when we first had the patio extended, the people who did this said there was a drainage pipe running underneath, but obviously it's not actually doing what it's intended to do. So what I'm going to do to make life a little bit easier is, instead of faffing about and trying to cut through this fabric here and take some of the stones away and connect the pipes together, I'm going to run the pipe straight down here, and I'm just going to have it run onto where this fabric is here, because underneath this fabric there is stones, and then that's where the drainage pipe is. So having the water just run into this general space is going to help it drain down into the grid. And it's the exact same thing I did for the French drain at the top of the garden too, and that seems to have worked really well. So the next thing to do is to get a rough level of the actual trench itself. Now this needed to slope down ever so slightly, just so that any water that runs down into the trench goes straight into the pipe and down towards the grid on the left hand side of the garden. You can see that the water's slowly flowing in the right direction, which is your indication that the trench is ready for the stones and for the pipe to be installed. But before I moved on to installing the pipe, I thought it'd be best to put the lawn edging in first, and the reason for this is because I'd be knocking posts into the ground. I thought it'd be a bit of a nightmare to get it as accurate as possible if the trench was full of stones and a pipe. So for the lawn edging, I opted to put the posts behind the actual lawn edging instead of in front. A good rule of thumb is to make sure that you've got your posts in front of whatever the load-bearing part of your actual, edging or wall is. The reason for this is that if the posts are in front of the wall, it's the actual posts themselves that are taking the actual brunt of the weight and the pressure that comes from the ground behind it. And this is essential because those posts are the things that are in the ground and the things that are anchoring your edging in place. Now I hadn't opted to go for this. What I opted to do was to put them behind purely for aesthetics. The reason for this is that the wood that I'm using is only 150mm tall, and it's not exactly bearing a lot of weight behind it. Although this does put the pressure on the screws rather than the actual posts that are in the ground, aesthetically it's going to look better, and it's not that big, and it's not going to make that much of a difference. Some people may argue that it will, but trust me, it won't. You'll be fine. Another good rule of thumb is to make sure at least 1/3 of the post is in the ground. Now, my pieces of wood were 50cm long, and I made sure that 20cm was knocked into the ground. Now, that is more than 1/3 of the post, but it was for a very specific reason, and that's because I wasn't using any postcrete or any cement to sort of secure these in place. I was just using the pressure of the clay and the ground below. It's probably not the best idea to just knock them in without any postcrete or without any cement, because it means the moisture in the soil will rot your wood much quicker, but this edging isn't going to disintegrate within 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It's going to last quite a few years. Each of the posts were 175mm away from the patio, which meant that when I put the lawn bordering on, it was about 130mm away. I made sure that I double, triple, quadruple checked all the measurements just to make sure that it was super even all the way around the patio. So the last thing to do was to install the drainage pipe. So I've got some 10mm drainage stone, I have some 20mm drainage stone too, and also some of the Cotswold stone, which is going to be the decorative stuff, which is the same as what we have on the top tier as well. I started off by pouring in some of the 10mm stone as like a bed for the pipe to sit on, because what you want to do is once you put your pipe into the trench, you want stones to surround the entire outside of it, and this is just so that water can flow freely from the ground above into the pipe, and it's not going to get all stodgy full of clay or dirt at the bottom of the pipe either. Installing the pipe is the most simple part of the whole project as well, because all you've got to do is unspool it, lay it in and put stones on top to weigh it down. One thing to mention as well is that the main aim of the landscape fabric is just to keep the dirt and the clay and things like that away from the pipe, just to make sure that the water can flow as easily as it can down to the drain. And I finished off by putting some of the Cotswold stone down once I wrapped the rest of the pipe with the stones up. Right, so I hope you did find today's video useful. If you did, feel free to give it a like, and if you'd like to see any more of my videos, such as my garden renovation series where I've taken a sloped new build lawn and converted it into a garden with 2 tiers with a patio, a retaining wall and a half decent lawn, then head over to my channel, and if you like what you see, feel free to subscribe. And finally, thanks for watching.